Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi accorded ceremonial welcome on arrival in Moscow to hold talks with President Putin over a full spectrum of bilateral issues. French politicians begin negotiations to form a government after hung parliament. French President Emmanuel Macron asked Prime Minister Gabriel Attal to remain temporarily in office. Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer promises better deal with the European Union. Labour Party rules out rejoining the EU single market or customs union. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban continues peace mission for Ukraine conflict, heads to Washington after a surprise visit to China. And US President Joe Biden vows to stay in presidential race, says average voter still wants him on the Democratic ticket. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Moscow, Russia on a two-day visit. He was received by the first Deputy Prime Minister of Russia and accorded ceremonial welcome. He also met members of the Indian diaspora. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Modi will hold bilateral talks with President Vladimir Putin.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Moscow to great fanfare. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received by Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov at the Vnukovo Second Airport and was accorded a ceremonial welcome upon his arrival. After landing in Moscow, Prime Minister Modi on a social media post said, "Looking forward to further deepening the special and privileged strategic partnership between our nations, especially in futuristic areas of cooperation. Stronger ties between our nations will greatly benefit our people." After reaching the hotel in Moscow, Prime Minister Modi received a traditional warm welcome from the Indian diaspora. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin will engage in private talks, followed by delegation-level discussions led by both leaders. India and Russia are currently preparing a series of outcome documents across various areas, which will be a result of the summit.
Tomorrow, Prime Minister has a packed schedule. He'll be attending the 22nd Annual Summit. He will have restricted and delegation-level talks, and he will meet the Indian community. He will address the Indian community members and also visit Rosatom, an exhibition space.
The Prime Minister is also scheduled to meet with the Indian community in Russia on Tuesday and lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in the Kremlin. Additionally, a visit to the Rosatom Pavilion at the Moscow exhibition venue is on the agenda. The 22nd Annual Summit between India and Russia will provide an opportunity for both leaders to review the full spectrum of bilateral issues, including defense, trade, investment, energy cooperation, science and technology, education, culture, and people-to-people exchanges.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be accompanied by Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Atom Exhibition Center here in Moscow. Now, this exhibition center showcases the history of achievement of the Soviet Union in the nuclear industry that goes much beyond weapons and also focuses on medicines and digital industry. The two leaders will also be looking at the history of the nuclear industry from the Soviet era to the modern times and the cooperation between the two countries. The Prime Minister will also be interacting with students, both Indian and Russian, tomorrow here at this center. This is Jessica Thaneja with video journalist Shubham in Moscow for DD India.
Russia is a long-standing and time-tested partner for India since both countries raised their partnership to a strategic partnership in October of 2000. The ties have acquired a qualitatively new character. Political, security, defense, trade, science and technology, culture and people-to-people ties are broad areas of cooperation. Mihir Mekhuri gets us more.
India and Russia share a long history of cooperation that dates back decades. Russia has been a long-standing and time-tested partner to India. Development of India-Russia relations has been a key pillar of India's foreign policy. The annual summit between the Prime Minister of India and the President of the Russian Federation is the highest institutionalized dialogue mechanism in the strategic partnership between India and Russia. India and Russia share deep historical roots, significantly strengthened by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his tenure as Chief Minister of Gujarat. Now let's take a look at the growing ties between India and Russia. PM Modi's first visit to Russia on the 6th of November 2001 when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. PM Modi accompanied the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Moscow for India-Russia Summit with President Vladimir Putin. During this visit, the then Chief Minister Modi signed a protocol pact for cooperation between Gujarat and Astrakhan. They agreed to work together in the fields of diverse sectors including trade, education, petroleum and hydrocarbon sectors, science and technology, tourism and culture. In 2006, the then Chief Minister visited Astrakhan and met the Governor Alexander Zilkin. The protocol pact for cooperation was extended for another 5 years. In 2009, he was invited to address the 4th International Energy Week and the 9th Russian Oil and Gas Week conference. Since 2014, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has placed special emphasis on strengthening India-Russia ties, boosting relations across various sectors. 60% of trade between India and Russia is now done in national currencies. Bilateral trade is set to reach an all-time high of $65.7 billion in FY 22-23. Key exports from India include pharmaceuticals, organic chemicals, and iron and steel. Major commodities imported from Russia include oil, petroleum products, and fertilizers. India-Russia bilateral investments surpassed the previous target of $30 billion in 2018. The revised target of $50 billion has been set for 2025. Now let's take a look at the defense ties. Biennial joint military exercises titled Indra conducted between the armed forces of India and Russia. India holds a 2+2 dialogue with Russia involving foreign and defense ministers. Indian Army has Russian tanks like T-72 and T-90. The Indian Air Force also has variants of MiG-21, Su-30 and MiG-29 aircraft in its fleet. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has always praised PM Modi's leadership. PM Modi also calls Russia a time-tested partner. This visit has taken the ties of the two countries to a new high. Mihir Makori's report, DD India.
And to talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia, joining me is Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, former ambassador to Russia and also former Foreign Secretary. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, as Prime Minister Modi begins his first bilateral tour of his third term, how do we read the significance of India-Russia ties in the current geopolitics?
Well, the current geopolitics is very complex, as you know.
Yes.
Ties between the West and Russia have collapsed. Russia is involved in a conflict in Ukraine, which has become a proxy war for the West against Russia through Ukraine. And all the existing ties between the two countries in various domains have been reversed, which is causing a lot of problems internationally, including for India, and one will come to that. India and also Russia's ties with China have strengthened very considerably because the United States treats both Russia and China as its adversaries, which gives both Russia and China geopolitical reasons to try and push back the United States from the Western Pacific and from Eastern Europe, or Ukraine in particular. So India then has to handle this situation as best as it can. India is not in a position to solve the issues that have been raised by this confrontation between the West and Russia and the strengthened ties between Russia and China. Our own relationship with Russia, as is mentioned earlier, is time-tested, is based on trust. Russia has never really harmed our interests. Russia has never sanctioned us, while the West has for decades has been sanctioning us, especially on strategic issues, has interfered in our internal affairs, and has propped up our neighbors against us. Today, we have built very strong ties with the United States. In particular, we are now trusting a country which in the past has harmed us. Now, in the case of Russia, there are elements which want us to reduce our ties with Russia, which doesn't make any sense. Why should we distrust a country which has always been favorably disposed to us and has helped us in very difficult times?
Okay.
Now, we don't see that we have to, in order to make new friends, discard our old friends. Our new friends and old friends have a place in our foreign policy, and there is no conflict as we are concerned between these two trajectories of our foreign policy. And Prime Minister's visit, and I'll end here, is actually, to my mind, conveys 2-3 things. One, that he is sending a signal to the West that there is no change in India's foreign policy with regard to balancing our relationship between the West and Russia. Number two, if there's a perception that because of the recent elections, Prime Minister Modi's position has been weakened and he'll be more susceptible to Western pressure, he's actually removing that impression and conveying a message that I am in charge, I have got the mandate, I am fully in control of our foreign policy choices, and I'll continue to pursue them. Number three, we are marking the point that our foreign policy is based on friendship with all as much as possible, and maintaining a balance in our external ties. And in that matrix, Russia has a very important position.
Right, that's very interesting, Ambassador Sibal. In this complex geopolitics, then, what would be the expectations from this format of India-Russia annual summit, the 22nd edition of which takes place tomorrow?
Well, you know, the fact that for the last 3 years or so, these annual summits were not held.
Yes.
And they've been held without break, without interruption since the year 2000, which gave rise to the impression that possibly there was a cooling off of ties between the two countries, although, of course, the argument was that because of COVID and because of the conflict in Ukraine, the conditions were not propitious for holding personalized summits, although the two leaders have been on telephone with each other and have interacted virtually. If you remember, when India was chairing the UN Security Council, and at its concluding session, it's the Prime Minister of India who chaired the session, and the only foreign head of state who participated in that meeting was President Putin, which was quite a gesture to India. So they've had contacts, but this interruption of personalized dialogue, summit level dialogue, had created some little gap in ties, and it was important, therefore, that Prime Minister visit Russia, has a summit with President Putin, and have extensive and in-depth talks to understand exactly what you said, what the complexities of the geopolitical situation are, and see what understanding he can get from President Putin of how he looks at these complexities and what India and Russia can do together to preserve our independence of action, strengthen our bilateral ties, and give more weight to our respective action on the global stage in coordination with each other, because we are member of BRICS, we are members of SCO, and we have these very important bilateral ties with Russia. So we have a role to play.
Right, and Ambassador Sibal, finally, the complexity, one aspect is also the Ukraine conflict that is on at the moment. Earlier, Prime Minister had said there's not the era of war. If I were to quote him from his departure statement, he also said, "We seek to play a supportive role for a peaceful and stable region." It'll be interesting to see India's intervention as far as this conflict is concerned during Prime Minister's visit.
Well, I don't think India intends to intervene in any manner. India would like to have a better understanding of how President Putin sees the end game. Because this is costing Russia, this is costing India, this is costing the global south, and it's costing Europe and the West too. And a lot of the structures of international relations have been disturbed a great deal because of this conflict. and one does not see an end to it, insofar as the West is concerned. And therefore, it's very important that some solution is found. Now, if you know, there was this peace summit in Switzerland, but it was a bit of a joke, frankly, if you ask me. You can't have an international peace summit on Ukraine if one of the principal parties to the conflict is not there to first fashion the agenda and then be part of the discussions. And the manner in which the West continues to give support to Ukraine in terms of arms supplies, in terms of latitude given to Ukraine now to hit targets within Russia, giving them long-range weapons, potentially F-16s and this and that. There is no sign of any de-escalation on the part of Russia or part of the West, which would give room to the Prime Minister to carry some message to President Putin that a way should be found out. Because if President Putin turns back and points out all the steps that are being taken by the West to make sure that this proxy war continues, then what is it that our Prime Minister can suggest in a positive way to President Putin to de-escalate himself? But of course, he would, as I said, talk about this because the interests of the Global South are involved. And in the G20, we showed that we have the capacity to reflect on the international stage the concerns of the Global South on this account. And I'd say this, that in terms of our own forward looking relations with Russia, we need to resolve some of the problems that have occurred because of the Ukraine conflict, the payments issue, boosting trade between the two countries, more investments, etc., etc. These are issues which are linked to the fallout of what is happening in terms of the Western sanctions on Russia.
Okay, on that note, Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, appreciate you joining us on the News Hour, sharing your perspective.
My pleasure.
Moving on, Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, on Monday promised to get a better deal with the European Union on post-Brexit trading rules. He visited Northern Ireland on Monday, his first visit since becoming the Prime Minister. Speaking to journalists in Northern Ireland's Belfast, as part of a tour of the 4 nations of the United Kingdom, Starmer highlighted that improving UK's relationship with the EU would require a commitment to uphold existing agreements. Labour has ruled out rejoining the EU single market or customs union, but has said it is possible to remove some trade barriers with the 27-nation bloc, which Britain left in 2020.
To improve relations with the EU. We think we can get a better deal than the botched deal that Boris Johnson brought home, and we will work on that, understanding the work that needs to be done and the nature of the challenge. But yes, we do want to improve that relationship.
And for more, DD India correspondent Ollie Barrett joins us live from London. Ollie, Prime Minister Starmer promises better ties with the EU. What could that entail?
Well, Shubhendu, I think to a large extent, to begin with at least, it's really mainly for now about a shift in tone. Keir Starmer believes that sometimes relations between the UK and the European Union post-Brexit have simply not been very friendly at times, have been fractious at times, have been difficult at times. And he believes that he can mend some of those slightly damaged ties in various different ways over recent years. In terms of specifics, though, when we hear him talking about tweaking or amending the trade deal agreed between London and Brussels, there are limited areas that the Labour Party would be able to potentially make changes in, particularly if they're not saying they want to re-enter the European Union. In fact, they're saying they wouldn't re-enter the EU, they wouldn't re-enter the single market, they wouldn't re-enter the European Union's customs union, and so that does leave limited options. But Labour, the government, does believe that you could see some agreements around defence, some agreements around veterinary, chemicals, rules that might be improved from the stance of both sides, some just attempts really to try and make things easier when it comes to things like holidaying, for example, was one of the things that Foreign Secretary David Lammy mentioned over the weekend, the idea that some Brits and some Europeans are finding it more difficult to holiday in each other's countries now than they did before Brexit took place. But, and it's a big but here, the European Union would have to agree to any changes that the UK was suggesting. And it's not at all clear that the European Union and some of its key member states are keen to go down that route at all. One of the things that countries like France, for example, want to guard against is the idea that a country like the UK can pull out of the EU, can get a trade deal, and can then gradually over time improve it and improve it and improve it to the point where other countries might wonder whether leaving the EU might be better for them as well. So Keir Starmer will say and continues to say that he wants to improve that deal between the UK and the European Union. It's not impossible that there might be some improvements to be made, but it's also a tall order to be looking at any significant changes of the like that some Brexit critics might be keen for.
And Ollie, if you could give us some insight on the importance and the key takeaways of Prime Minister Starmer's post-election tour of the United Kingdom so far.
Well, again, Shubhendu, a lot of this is about tone and about atmospherics and about optics. Keir Starmer making it very clear that he wants to get across the four nations of the United Kingdom within the very first few days of his time in office. Now, he has a NATO Leaders Summit to head to in Washington on Tuesday, so he knew he had to do it before then, and that's why he's rattled around the country very quickly since winning the election last week. He says that, again, he believes that relations between London and the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, the other countries, nations that make up the United Kingdom, he says relations have been strained at times between central government and the devolved administrations, and he wants to improve that. So that's been part of it, going and shaking hands with leaders in the UK's nations and talking about areas of concern and trying to forge a constructive relationship. When it comes to Wales, for example, there is a Labour government in Wales, and now it's a Labour government in London. So that, you would expect, means that they would find it more easy to work together than, for example, in recent years when we've had a Labour administration in Wales and a Conservative administration in government. And so those different political parties have sometimes come up against each other in various different ways. But Keir Starmer also just wanting to cement the idea as the new Prime Minister that he's the Prime Minister of the entire United Kingdom, and wanting to make it clear to all of the four nations of the UK that they're all high priorities for him.
Ollie, thank you for those updates. Russia launched a barrage of missiles on Kiev and other Ukrainian cities in a rare daytime attack on Monday, in which a hospital was also hit. The Russian Defense Ministry says that its forces had carried out strikes on defense industry targets and aviation bases in Ukraine. In a statement, the ministry said objectives of the strike have been achieved. Meanwhile, two corvettes of the Russian Navy's Pacific Fleet left the port of Vladivostok in Russia's Far East to carry out training missions in the Asia-Pacific region on Monday. The corvettes, the Bresky and the Kromsky, will conduct a number of exercises in the Asia-Pacific region, including searching for and destroying mock enemy submarines, and will also work out joint algorithms for air defense and anti-sabotage defense at sea. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has emerged as a pivotal figure in diplomatic efforts aimed at resolving the Ukraine crisis. His recent engagements on international stage have underscored his proactive approach towards fostering peace in the region. During a bilateral visit to China, Orban engaged in substantive discussions with President Xi Jinping, signaling a concerted effort to explore diplomatic avenues. This follows closely on the heels of significant talks with Russian President Putin in Moscow and Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kiev, where the discussion centered on potential pathways to peace in Ukraine gained considerable attention. Syed Absarul Hassan puts Orban's visit into perspective.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has taken proactive steps in advancing a potential peace plan for Ukraine. During his visit to China on Monday, Orban engaged in high-level discussions with President Xi Jinping. This followed his significant talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding potential pathways to peace in Ukraine, where Orban's diplomatic efforts are gaining attention. Orban's visit to Moscow came shortly after his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv, underscoring his commitment to facilitating dialogue among key stakeholders. In a briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry said that the President Xi had appreciated the efforts by Hungarian's Prime Minister to mediate a political solution to the ongoing Ukraine crisis.
The two sides focused on in-depth communication on the Ukraine crisis. Prime Minister Orban briefed on his recent visit to Ukraine and Russia. President Xi appreciated Prime Minister Orban's effort to promote a political solution to the Ukrainian crisis and elaborated on China's relevant views and ideas.
After meeting President Xi in Beijing on a peace mission 3.0, Orban departed Beijing en route for Washington. The tour of Orban is significant as Hungary has assumed the 6-month rotating presidency of the bloc on Monday. However, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has emphasized that achieving a just and lasting peace in Ukraine hingers solely on unity and determination within the 27-nation EU. Despite pressure from European countries, Viktor Orban has chosen not to send weapons to Kyiv and has maintained a strong economic ties with Moscow since Russian forces launched their special operation in Ukraine in 2022. This stance has positions Hungary uniquely among EU member states, raising questions about its strategic alignment amidst the broader European effort to support Ukraine. Syed Afsarul Hassan, reporting for DD India.
US President Joe Biden has again reaffirmed that he is going to stay in the presidential race, stressing that he is confident about the average voter who still wants him on the Democratic ticket. Biden wrote to lawmakers as they returned to Washington following the July 4th recess. He said that he is up for any challenge. In an interview to a news channel, Biden expressed frustration with what he called an effort by the elites to force him out of the presidential race against Trump. And going back to our top story, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also visit Austria's capital, Vienna, after his Russia trip. The last time an Indian Prime Minister went to Austria was 40 years ago, although India and Austria have been friends for 75 years, with extensive trade, tech, sustainable development and people-to-people ties. Prime Minister will also be interacting with some 31,000-strong Indian diaspora in Austria to further strengthen the relations with a key European nation. DD India's Gautam Roy reports from Vienna.
India-Austria ties go back 75 years. They both share common values such as democratic principles and pluralism. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Austria on Tuesday and Wednesday, where he'll call on President Alexander von der Bellen and hold delegation-level talks with his counterpart, Federal Chancellor Karl Nehammer. In his departure statement, the PM said, "I look forward to my discussions to take our partnership to even greater heights in new and emerging areas of innovation, technology and sustainable development, among others. Together with the Austrian Chancellor, I look forward to exchanging views with business leaders from both sides to explore mutually beneficial trade and investment opportunities." Austria has a multicultural society with over 31,000 strong Indian diaspora. The PM will also be interacting with them during his visit, which is a much-awaited event for the members of the Indian community.
Everyone is looking forward to meet Prime Minister Modi ji, and it's after a long time that an Indian Prime Minister is coming to Austria, and he has done a lot for the foreign politics and helped a lot for the economic growth and everything. So everyone is looking forward.
Indian diaspora, especially the students and researchers, the subgroup I belong to, is very excited for Prime Minister Modi's visit to Austria. We are looking forward to it, and I am pretty much excited to see how the socio-economical and cultural aspects play forward from this point onwards.
India and Austria have extensive relations from infrastructure, technology to sustainable development. Trade is well balanced, around $3 billion each year. Indian exports to Austria stand at $1.52 billion. Imports from Austria stand at $1.41 billion. Indian investments in Austria amount to over $1 billion. Austrian investments in India are at over $800 billion. Austria offers opportunities for collaboration in multiple fields, ranging from infrastructure, renewable energy to startups. India and Austria Startup Bridge was launched in February 2024. 20+ Indian startups went to Austria in June this year to participate in a startup event. India and Austria have also inked a landmark Comprehensive Migration and Mobility Agreement in May 2024. India and Austria have been friends for 75 years, and a gap of over 40 years will be filled by the visit of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Austria and when these two leaders meet. There's a 31,000 strong Indian community as well who've been looking forward to interact and meet the Prime Minister, and all these events will take the relationship between India and Austria forward into the future, be it in trade, tech or sustainable development. With Camp President Pramod Negi, Gautam Roy in Vienna, Austria for DD India.
India's Prime Minister is visiting Austria for 2 days starting Tuesday. It's after a gap of over 40 years that an Indian PM is touring Austria, with which India has multifaceted relations for the last 75 years. India's ambassador to Austria, Shambhu S. Kumaran, told DD India's Gautam Roy that Prime Minister Modi's Vienna visit will add further dynamism to India-Austria relations while energizing the Indian diaspora in this key European nation. Take a look.
An Indian Prime Minister is visiting Austria after a gap of over 40 years, and it's also the 75th year of diplomatic ties between India and Austria. So what's on the agenda? Let's find out from Shambhu S. Kumaran, India's ambassador to Austria. Thank you for speaking to DD India. So what can you tell us about, first of all, 75 years being a major landmark, and what kind of a plan is there or an agenda is there for Prime Minister Modi in Austria?
As you said, this is a historic visit happening after 4 decades at the Prime Minister level and on the milestone year of 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and Austria. I think the visit is going to give great dynamism to this partnership. It's going to give the high-level political visibility that this relationship requires, and it's a relationship that has been performing reasonably well. And with this visit, we expect it to gain dynamism and content.
And can you tell us about what is the level of cooperation that India and Austria already have, and where do you see it going in the coming years as well in terms of the various aspects of it, trade, business, even security for that matter, and sustainable development?
Well, the visit obviously has a strong focus, as you say, on the economic cooperation between our countries. There are Indian companies that are operating in Austria, and there are several Austrian companies operating in India. And as part of the program, there will be an interaction with Indian and Austrian CEOs to try and see how we can move this partnership forward, especially in niche technologies, clean technologies, and also in terms of bringing some of our startups together in innovative new partnerships. The idea is that Austrian technology fundamentally can be an important partner for India in our efforts to gain Viksit Bharat. And I think that there is a good groundwork has already been laid, and what we need is a quantum leap in this partnership, and this is what I think this visit will succeed in doing.
And whenever Prime Minister Modi travels abroad himself, the Indian diaspora is an intrinsic part of those visits as well. So what can we expect in Vienna?
Well, as you would expect, there's great enthusiasm and excitement among the Indian community here. The Prime Minister is going to address them during his visit, and I think this will be one of the highlights of the visit here.
Thank you for speaking to DD India.
Let's talk about elections in France. France is heading towards a hung parliament with hectic parleys happening in Paris with regard to government formation. Left-wing coalition has emerged as the top contender for forming government after it bagged highest number of seats, followed by Macron's centrist alliance, with far-right Le Pen's National Rally coming third. The next report navigates through the pulls and pressures of what is going to happen in France in the coming days.
It seems France is heading towards a period of political uncertainty with a fractured mandate after 2 rounds of elections. French politicians have begun negotiations to form a government. French President Emmanuel Macron has asked outgoing Prime Minister Gabriel Attal to remain temporarily in office after he offered to quit following his party's performance in the polls. However, a member of France's LFI party opposed this decision.
In these circumstances, there can be no question that the retention of Gabriel Attal in Matignon will erase the vote of French people. It is a democratic issue, and it is a duty for the president to call on the new Popular Front to government to respect the word, the vote and the result of the votes of the voters.
Meanwhile, the left-wing coalition known as the New Popular Front has emerged with the highest number of seats in the 577-seat assembly, securing 182 seats. The other major players include Macron's centrist alliance bagging 168 seats, Le Pen's National Rally winning 143 seats. In a day of hectic political developments, political figures from the hard-left France Unbowed Party, LFI, held a meeting to decide on a possible PM candidate after pulling a runoff upset against far-right rivals.
In theory, the Prime Minister should come from the ranks of the New Popular Front. Leave us a couple of hours for us to propose a name. But I think that's an imperative, a need, as we can see an anti-democratic takeover coming from the President.
What comes next remains highly uncertain. The choice of France's future Prime Minister formally belongs to the country's President Emmanuel Macron, who is not legally bound by the election results, though political custom dictates that the head of government be chosen from the ranks of the strongest political force or coalition. Due to the dual executive system, the president is elected separately by direct universal suffrage and operates as head of state. The constitution gives the president the power to appoint the prime minister, often known as the premier, who oversees the execution of legislation. The president also appoints the Council of Ministers or Cabinet, which together with the Prime Minister is referred to as the government. How does cohabitation work? Now, as the opposition won majority, Macron to appoint a Prime Minister belonging to that new majority. In this cohabitation, the government would implement policies that diverge from the president's plan. What about Macron? The president's term runs until 2027. With no majority and no possibility to implement his own plans, Macron comes out weakened from the elections. In line with France's constitution, he still holds some powers over foreign policy, European affairs and defense, and is in charge of negotiating and ratifying international treaties. Yet today, both the far-right and the leftist coalition's views in these areas differ radically from Macron's approach and would likely be a subject of tension during a potential cohabitation. Bureau Report, DD India.
And to talk about the outcome of these very interesting elections, joining me is François Gauthier, senior French journalist. Bonsoir, monsieur. Now, how do you interpret the sharp reversal in the French elections? Far right moves to number third from being the favourites.
Well, many people are sad for three reasons. The first reason is that Mr. Macron and his Prime Minister, Mr. Gabriel Attal, were useful, intelligent, nice people who were governing France. I mean, there were many problems, of course, but in a stable manner. And now France is going to face a lot of political uncertainty, economic backlash, because this coalition is very diverse, from the communists to the ecologists, to the rightists, to the centrists, who all come together against the Mrs. Le Pen far-right parties. So France is going to face a lot of difficulties. There have been riots also yesterday night, and we're expecting more troubles in France because the Muslim minority in France feel that they have many revendications. The second reason is that Mr. Macron's government is very friendly to India. Mr. Modi and Mr. Macron had forged a very strong friendship, and I think the fact that Mr. Modi was the guest of the 14th of July, French National Day, and Mr. Macron in turn was invited on the 26th of January in India. There was a really strong bond between the two leaders, and now the people who stand to form the next government, the next Prime Minister government, will not be as friendly to India as Mr. Macron was. So that's the second reason. The third reason, of course, is that things are a little upside down because, as I said, Mr. Macron was a very, very able gentleman. And the parties that have come up, there are many extremist people, more extremist than the far right, because after all, Mrs. Le Pen, I mean, whatever you can say about the political views, and some of us differ with her. We don't agree with some of her political views, but she's not she doesn't kill any people. She's not a murderer. So the same accusation that were carried against Mr. Modi by some of the French journalists who were in Delhi are also carried against Mrs. Le Pen. So even though I don't agree with her, I mean, she's not as bad and as violent and as Nazi as some of the Western press and some of the Indian press have portrayed her. The fact that there are a lot of problems in France with immigrants, a lot of immigrants in France, is something that worries Frenchmen. I mean, not only Mrs. Le Pen.
Okay, and sir, given that no party has got a clear majority, it's a hung assembly as we're looking at it, what are then the possibilities of government formation from here on? The far left says that they're ready to form the government.
You see, it happened before once, when Mr. Mitterrand, who was a leftist, was the president of France. Mr. Chirac, who was the rightist, won the election and he became the prime minister. So there was what the French call cohabitation, cohabitation between the two. It was not easy, but somehow it went through. So the same thing is going to happen, I think. Mr. Gabriel Attal is an interim prime minister now, and eventually Mr. Macron will ask him to resign. And this coalition party, who again are so different, they, in normal time they would hate each other, they would stab each other in the back, and indeed in the long run they might stab each other in the back. They're going to have a prime minister, probably from one of the central rightist party, but this coalition is not going to be a stable government. So Mr. Macron is going to be a lame duck prime minister with a lame duck government, and France, which is the second most powerful nation in the EU, is going to suffer a lot. So, as a Frenchman, as a lover of India, defender of India, I feel sad for both reasons.
Right, and you mentioned EU. How does the fractured mandate impact France's position within EU and also the stability of the organization, the Union?
Yes, these have many implications, not only for the EU, where France is a major partner, but I think Mr. Macron has certain powers which allow him to keep a lead on as far as the EU is concerned. But if you look at the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, this will definitely have implication, because Mr. Mélenchon, with the Communist Party leader, who's one of the major leaders of the coalition, is of course the pro-Russia, pro-communist leader. So he's not going to want France to be involved and to keep on, supporting Ukraine. So this is going to have far coalition results. In terms of ecology, the French ecologists are against the nuclear power energy. So I'm looking at a very troubled future in the next 3 years in France.
Mr. Gauthier, I appreciate you joining us on the News Hour, sharing your perspective.
My pleasure.
And the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin greeted NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg upon his arrival at the Pentagon on Monday ahead of a NATO summit. During a meeting, Austin praised Stoltenberg's leadership, highlighted the importance of the upcoming NATO summit.
This summit will celebrate 75 years of the greatest defensive alliance in history. The summit will deepen our extraordinary transatlantic bond and strengthen our shared security. I know that President Biden is proud to host this summit, and he looks forward to marking our historic achievements with leaders from our now 32 NATO allies.
Stoltenberg also commended Austin's leadership, particularly in mobilizing support for Ukraine.
We will celebrate our alliance this week, the 75th anniversary, but we will also make decisions for the future on deterrence and defense, ensuring that we have the forces, the readiness, the capabilities we need to continue to deter any aggressor, and also ensure that allies continue to carry their fair share of the burden.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. At least 10 people have died and 40 are missing after torrential rains caused a landslide in a gold mine in Indonesia's Sulawesi Island. The landslide on Sunday morning in Gorontalo province killed miners and residents living nearby. Hurricane Beryl lashed Texas with strong winds and heavy rains on Monday as it churned inland, forcing the closure of oil ports. Hundreds of flights were cancelled, leaving thousands of homes and businesses in the state without power. Category 5 Hurricane Beryl made landfall near the coastal town of Matagorda in Texas early in the day. Presidential election campaign kicks off in Venezuela as political tensions escalate ahead of the upcoming elections. Supporters of incumbent President Nicolas Maduro mobilized supporters for the July 28th elections. India's President Draupadi Murmu inaugurated the Divine Retreat Centre during her official visit to the eastern Indian state of Odisha on Monday. President Murmu launched the national campaign Lifestyle for Sustainability of Brahma Kumaris at Haridmada village near the capital, Bhubaneswar. President said that small changes in our daily lives pave the way for big changes in society. 4 army personnel were martyred after terrorists attacked an army vehicle in Kathua in Jammu and Kashmir on Monday. 6 more soldiers were injured in the attack, have been rushed to the hospital. The terrorists attacked the army vehicle and hurled grenades at the Macheri area from atop a hill. Updates now on the rain and flood situation across India. Major rivers Brahmaputra, Barak are flowing above danger levels, triggering alerts in Assam. Landslides triggered by rain have blocked several national highways and rural access roads in Uttarakhand. Widespread flooding, waterlogging is reported in Mumbai. Mihir Maikuri gets us the latest on the monsoon fury.
As the monsoon season engulfs India, various parts of the country are struggling to cope with the incessant rains. On Monday, India's financial capital Mumbai and its surrounding areas witnessed heavy rains over the past 24 hours, resulting in widespread flooding, waterlogging and disruption of suburban train services.
Since yesterday, we started getting very good rainfall, and during night time, since night 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we have got almost 270 millimeter rain because of the offshore trough. And we have kept the orange alert for Mumbai today also, and yellow alert for tomorrow.
Visuals from across the city showed people wading through waist-deep waters with cars lined bumper to bumper on Mumbai roads. All government, private and municipal schools and colleges have been closed across the city. The National Disaster Response Force has also been deployed across to prevent emergencies. Mumbai's lifeline, its local train system, was brought to a standstill by the heavy rains. Waterlogging was reported from Worli, Buntara Bhavan in Kurla East, King Circle area of Mumbai, Dadar and Vidya Vihar railway station. In India's northeastern state of Assam, the flood situation remains critical, affecting 2.5 million people across 29 districts. The death toll has risen to 66, with recent reports confirming 8 additional fatalities. Major rivers such as the Brahmaputra and Barak are flowing above danger levels, triggering high alerts in affected areas. In Kaziranga National Park, floods have claimed 114 wild animals, while 95 have been rescued. Relief and rescue operations are underway on a war footing in the affected areas. Intermittent heavy rains in Uttarakhand have severely disrupted normal life. Landslides triggered by the rain have blocked several national highways and rural access roads. In the Kumaon region, intense rainfall has caused flooding and damage to homes, particularly in Champawat and Udham Singh Nagar districts, where waterlogging is affecting roads and homes, significantly impacting daily life. Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami has stressed the need for continuous monitoring of the situation. Bihar in eastern India is facing severe floods as continuous water release from the Kosi and Gandak barrages, prompted by heavy rainfall, has submerged hundreds of villages and destroyed thousands of hectares of crops. The Kosi barrage alone has released 400,000 cubic meters of water, raising flood risk along Saharsa's embankments. The district administration is on high alert, with SDRF teams actively involved in disaster response. Mihir Maikuri's report, DD India.
Let's get some update from the ground. Shishir Shelar, my colleague, is joining us from Mumbai. Shishir, how's the weather in Mumbai at present, and how are people coping with the familiar floods and waterlogging due to rains?
Well, absolutely. Since morning, we have seen that Mumbai has witnessed a very heavy rainfall. The normal rainfall, probably we can say, is around 65 millimeter that Mumbai can receive. But this time around, in just a few hours, Mumbai has received almost 300 millimeter rainfall. And that's the reason we have seen a waterlogging situation at various parts of the city. And since morning, the city has crippled. Obviously, the transportation system has also working quite delayed here. As far as the local trains are concerned, in the morning we have seen that the local train services are disrupted completely. We have seen a huge traffic on Mumbai roads, and obviously this time around also when I'm walking on the road, the Mumbai the International Fire Department has predicted very heavy rainfall even tomorrow. A red alert has already been issued by the IMD, and that's the reason precautions have been taken care of. Well, so far the situation has increased quite better in Mumbai compared to the morning time. But still, the government is quite vigilant at this point in time, and that's the reason various measures have been taken by the state government along with the BMC, the local municipal corporation. At the same time, we've also seen that the NDRF team has also been put in place to help the people also with stranded at various places. As far as Mumbai is concerned, now normalcy has returned to Mumbai, but the continuous rainfall in Mumbai particularly is quite a worrisome factor for all the Mumbaikars. As far as the rest of Maharashtra is concerned, the Konkan region has received a huge rainfall since last 2 days, and particularly yesterday night. And that's the reason even now also, if you look at the situation, particularly in Konkan region, we have seen that due to the high tide also, the coastal region have been alerted here, and that's the reason NDRF team have been put in place in all those places.
Right, Shishir, thank you very much for those updates from Mumbai. Moving on, the Ministry of Economic Affairs of Taiwan is organizing Taiwan Export 2024 in New Delhi. The 3-day event is being held from 8th to 10th of July, showcasing some of the best cutting-edge technologies and innovation from Taiwan, also seeking investment opportunities in India. Our correspondent, Dibyendu Mondal, has more on this.
The Taiwan Export 2024 is a significant milestone in fostering India-Taiwan growth, highlighting the potential for collaboration between the two economies. The 3-day expo features world-class innovation and cutting-edge technologies from Taiwan, spanning various sectors. Among the highlights is the Taiwan Excellence Pavilion, organized by the Taiwan government, where 24 renowned brands are presenting their latest products and solutions. This pavilion provides a platform to strengthen the enduring ties between India and Taiwan. It also stands as a testament to Taiwan's commitment to excellence and innovation.
We are showcasing 24 companies with their 66 award-winning products. And the pavilion covers 3 themes. First is smart manufacturing, second is ICT and AI, and third is smart living, and fitness.
The participation of these Taiwanese companies not only open doors for business, but also strengthens the bilateral relation between India and Taiwan. The expo is a hub for exchanging ideas, forging new partnership, and paving the way for future growth.
We are looking for the investment and like a retail store, like a department store and a grocery store or organic food store. So I think this is a good place to present Lecha Latte and let us India people can try our culture beverage and to get to know Taiwan culture.
With the central theme, Immerse Yourself in the Future, the bouquet of new innovation and technology leaves visitors spellbound and redefines industries. This 3 days Taiwan Expo 2024 gives opportunities to business companies from both the countries to engage and further strengthen the ties for business between both the countries. With camera person Vinay, this is Dibyendu Mondal from New Delhi for DD India.
Sri Lanka's Foreign Affairs Minister MUM Ali Sabri denied reports that the country has decided to end ban on foreign scientific research vessels in its waters and exclusive economic zones. These reports came after Sabri's visit to Japan last week. He explained that his statements were misunderstood and confirmed that no decision has been made to lift the ban, which remains in effect for this year. Embassy of France in India, Embassy organized a high-level conference on India's preparation for Paris 2024 Olympic Games with the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Monday in New Delhi. DD India's Deepika Mato gets us more.
With less than a month to the year's mega global sports event, Paris Olympics 2024, Embassy of France in India organized a high-level conference on India's preparation for Paris 2024 Olympic Games with the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Monday in New Delhi. Speaking on the occasion, Thierry Mathieu, Ambassador of France to India, said that not only India and France are fostering relationship in sports sector with having events spread across India for the upcoming Olympics event, but France is also going to create many records at the upcoming Olympics.
I'm sure that this new MOU will add a new dimension in the bilateral interaction and cooperation between France and India.
Speaking about how France is gearing up for the mega event, India's first Olympic gold medalist Abhinav Bindra said that Olympics in France is going to be a visual spectacle.
I think the Paris Games are going to be a visual spectacle. I mean, just the sporting venues at the backdrop of these iconic venues, I think it's going to be a feast for the eyes. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. The games are going to be much more youthful, much more vibrant with the inclusion of many urban sports.
France as a nation is focusing on innovation, sustainability and inclusivity as the main pillars of global games. As per its innovative effort, for the first time, the opening ceremony will take place at Seine River. 4 new disciplines will be there, including climbing, surfing and skateboarding. It is also going to be the most eco-friendly and green games. France is also aiming to achieve gender equality, which is on top of its diplomatic agenda. A special summit is also to be organized on the eve of the opening ceremony on sports and its sustainable development goals, or the SDGs. There will be one common logo for Paralympics and Olympics as well across the same venue. 90% of the venues will be used for the competition, turning the entire city into an Olympics venue. So one can also attend the opening ceremony at different fan zones spread across India, which are being set up by the Embassy of France in India. So with all eyes on the upcoming Olympics, the hope of getting more number of gold medals increases day by day as we look at the preparations in run-up to Paris Olympics 2024. Deepika Mehta's report for DD India.
That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on your screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.